tell you. Okay, gang. So this talk is going to be about helping, you're in jazz band, teaching jazz band, you have a piano player, and you're like, oh, what do I do with this kid? Because it's just so different than all the wind instruments. So everything's fine until, oh no, there's no more music written in. So now what do we do? And then the piano player probably looks at you like, what do I do? And you're like, oh, I don't know. So first things first, it's a good start to have just triads, just simple triads. So if you have them practice like C major, so C, E, G. They just get the triad down, maybe slap an octave on top of that. Okay, so then what they can practice, first step, is like triads, just blocking it, all the inversions. And then of course in the rhythm section, we gotta do it in every key. Any instrument really, right? So get them started with mastering triads. C major, F major, just common keys before they branch out into other keys. So start with blocks, and then maybe you can. So start arpeggiating them. All right, that's a pretty good start. Because then when they see like A minor in the music, they'll start to associate it with A, C, E. They might be doing the same thing in both hands, but at least they're thinking in a way that they don't need everything notated anymore. So that being said, once they got a basic understanding of triads, then I would move into other stuff. And so the cool thing about piano is, I'm actually stealing this from another teacher, so I thought he just explained it so well. The piano is basically like a full symphony orchestra. So down here in the very low areas, you got like your bass section, So in the context of jazz, you can do like you can get all creative and start doing the walking bass lines. Just so bass lines are down here in the low stuff. We move up a little bit, and we don't necessarily want to play like full chords. I mean, it sounds like really muddy, So a couple of pianists, the other guy's name escapes me, but I know Bud Powell was involved in coming up with shell voicings. So when bebop started getting big, there was like a lot of chords, and they were changing really fast. And so what happened was like the pianist started saying, forget it, I'm not going to hit all these notes, right? It's flying. So shell voicings, you can use the root and the seventh. That's a general idea. You could also use like a sixth and a root, or a fifth and a third. So just getting characteristic tones for the chord that you're trying to get. So like a C major chord, a shell voicing for C major 7 might be C and B. And that's it. So you're down here, but it doesn't sound too muddy like that. Right?
Was it Horace Silver, the other one?
That sounds right. Yeah.
I remember Horace Silver doing a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, guys, I'm still a jazz baby. So, like, the experienced jazz dudes, like, feel free to hop in. And, like, anyone else, too. Like, if you got pedagogy.
I'm already learning.
Yeah.
Me too.
Think tank, brainstorming sesh. So we got our bass lines down here. And then up here you got kind of shell voicings. Now once you get closer to the middle of the keyboard, I like to use what are called Santisi chords, which are pretty similar to like basic triads. So like C major 7 or C major 6. Just pretty simple like root position chords. You got all the notes involved. It'd be kind of cool if we could like flip the piano and then give a visual.
Yeah.
But if you want to, at any time, you can just like peek over my shoulder and see what I'm doing, if that would help. But for learning, the name Santisi chords comes from Ray Santisi. He taught jazz piano at Berklee. He wrote a pretty good book. It's called Jazz Piano by Ray Santisi. So it might be a good resource if you want. So he talks about chords. And here it's important to major 6 chord, minor 6 chord, minor 7th chord, half diminished, dominant, fully diminished, major 7th. So if you get all your 7th chords in and you get the major and minor 6th, you basically have any chord in its permutation. The next step would be like learning the inversions. So for C, the key of C, right? I have C major 6, C minor 6, C minor 7, C half diminished, and so on, right? And then once I get C down, maybe I start arpeggiating them. And already doing that, I have a lot of vocabulary I could use to improvise, right? But just simply by like breaking up chords like that, right? So once I get C down, oh, you guessed it, maybe I move to F. F major 6, F minor 6, F minor 7. So I'm getting all my inversions down. And once I master this, yeah, I got any chord in any key.
Any range.
Yeah, because you can just bump it up, right? Move it. Right?
Range is like from what I understand, a pretty big deal for comping, just because of, you know, not getting muddy in the lower register, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just not. Is Santisi just the approach of playing those inversions in that fashion, or is there something different about the voicing?
Yeah, it's basically just that.
Okay, cool.
Just running them, making sure you hit the 6th and 7th chords.
Did you practice your Santisis today?
Yeah, Ray Santisi talks about those quite a bit. And then we get to our pyramid chords, pyramid voicings, which is like the more exotic stuff. So like, we talked about Santisi, which might work really well if you're like playing a ballad, like by yourself, you know. Right? Hit a wrong chord. But it's just really pretty to like pulse those chords. Sounds really good by itself. But if you're in a group playing piano, if you're always playing full chords, you know, you're playing the root 3rd, 5th, and 7th, the bass player might start getting a little cranky because he's covering roots and fifths a lot. And so if you're doubling that all the time, it's just going to sound like a little bit like, oh man, so-and-so piano player hasn't really done their homework. You know, they're just playing basic chords all the time. So then when we get into that, these voicings are going to be good for like comping up in the higher areas. So let's go with the key of D major. Just seems like the thing to do. All right. Could somebody tell me what a 2-5-1 would be in D major? Like first chord? Yeah.
E what? E minor what? E minor 7.
E minor 7, yeah. And then let's build the chord off the A. So we have E minor 7, and then A. Do you know what type of 7 that would be? Okay, so we're in the key of D major. And so if we're building a 2-5-1, we got an E minor 7 as the 2. And this is going to be the same as classical harmony here. The 5 is going to be a what type of 7th chord? Nice.
Which is it?
Dominant 7. Oh, thanks, Jason.
I thought it says this is all 9 hole handwriting.
And then, so we have our 2, 5. 1 is just going to be major, right? And because it's jazz, we got to slap a 7 on it. So D major 7. E minor 7. A7. D major 7. Alright, so if your kid starts getting that concept down, that's a pretty good start. Right? So now to make it a little more interesting, I'd have them just practice these voicings in 2-5-1s. Cool. So starting with D major. So left hand's just going to play the bass note. Go E, A, D. That's it. E, A, D. Right hand's going to start doing the fun stuff. All right, so we're going to find guide tones. Guide tones are, do you remember what guide tones are? For a chord. Characteristic tones of the chord. 3rd and 7th.
1, 3, 5, 7.
Yeah. 3rd and 7th. Okay. Because the bass, he's got root and 5th covered. So as a piano player, you got to worry about the 3rds and the 7ths. All those color notes. Okay, so you got, could somebody tell me the 3rd and the 7th of E minor 7? G and... Nice. So there's 2 ways to do it. Let's put the 7th on the bottom. Oh, sorry.
No, I like that. I like that better.
I already wrote it. I kind of like it better too.
Oh.
They have a different sound versus, right? Okay, so we have the 7th on the bottom. And then when we go to A, only one thing changes. So the G is going to stay the same in the A7 chord. But then, as Jason is beautifully writing, what's the 3rd of an A7 chord? C sharp, yeah. So hear that? It sounds kind of nice. Just that one note changes. And then it's nifty because when we go to D, only the top note changes. So we're only changing one note at a time. Doesn't that sound pretty? You're just saying that to be nice. It's late. You're like, yeah, hurry up. I want to go home. All right, so these would be your guide tones for a 2-5-1. And that's a great foundation. So if you're a piano player in your band, you start getting them just to play guide tones like you're playing the blues, and you're like, okay, play the guide tones. For like... And they get that going, that's a great start. But we can add a little something to it. We can do what are called 5-9-5 voicings, which means we're gonna slap another note on top of it. So instead of just the 3rd and the 7th, I can add a 5th on top of it. That's really pretty. Now we got 3 note voicings. So I got a 5th on top of it, and then I just move that one note, that C sharp, and then the 5th, so I'm playing a B here. That's the 5th of the 2 chord, stays a B. It becomes the what scale degree of the A7?
9. We call it 9 in jazz.
Ooh. So you got a 5 and a 9 here, and then we're going to move it down. So then we get the 5-9-5 type of sound.
Why do we call it 9 instead of 2, Izzy?
That's a good question. Because actually the piano's a good way to visualize it. So if I have like E minor 7, no, A7. if I say 2, it kind of implies a different sound. It's kind of like a pop, like a suspended 2 type of chord, right? Pretty poppy sounding versus. So the 9 is implying that I'm stacking. I'm like extending that harmony.
That's the word. We call them extensions. 9, 11, 13, that kind of thing.
Right, so, and that's going to have this type of sound. That's pretty.
That sounds like jazz.
Yeah.
Would you mind playing that that progression in like the Santisi style, like root position Santisi style, and then play it that way so we could hear the difference?
Sure, I think that's an excellent idea. So Santisi style might be something like this.
Just like, yeah, like just root position chords.
It sounds nice, but it's not quite. It's a little more fresh, right?
It also has clearer voice leading too, doesn't it?
Right, right. And like theoretically with Santisi, you could voice lead it a little better, like invert a chord. But it's still not, like Jason said, it's still not going to be like, where I'm just like minimally changing notes and it gets totally different colors. So it's pretty cool in that way. Okay, one more. Hang with me. I know it's kind of tedious. So you can add another note in there. We're going to call these a lot of numbers happening up here. So we talked about the 5, 9, 5s. Let's go for 9, 13, 9. So we added more extensions. So we have our 5th. All we have to do is slap a 9 in there. Ooh, now it's a little crunchier. So what's the 9 of E minor 7?
F what?
F sharp. Oh, that. Oh no. All right, I'm just gonna write it here. You get it. Okay, so we have our 9. Oh. We can keep it the same, and it becomes the 13 of the A7. Get the idea, right? So keep that F sharp the same. Hold that over. Why can't I notate anything today? We'll just say that's good. And then, could somebody tell me what the 9 of D major 7 is? Yeah. Cool. So again, it's super good voice leading. We're just minimally changing the notes. That one sounds like this. Yeah, same key. So this is E with the 9th, E minor with the 9th, A7 with the 13, D major 7 with the 9. So just as a recap, we got guide tones, we got 5, 9, 5, and then we got 9, 13, 9. Guess what? We're not going to go through all of it because it's like, it's pretty tedious stuff. But you can also invert it. So you can invert the guide tones and build them the other way. So you can invert it. So there's 2 versions of all that.
Why might you want to invert it?
Again, it's all about context. Oh, which brings me to my next slide, actually. Wonderful question.
Sweet.
You can mix and match these different tactics to suit your performance context. So if I'm doing a solo piano gig, I might not want to do like spread voicings all the time. rootless voicings, I might not want to do something like that because then I'm not giving myself or the listener the context that they need. I may slap some bass notes in, you know, maybe some Santisi chords in. If I'm doing a blues by myself, I may like walk a bass line in my left hand and then play some chords up here. If I'm in a combo, I may be comping up here using more fancy voicings. So I mean, like, a lot of it does depend on context. And so going back to that question, like, why does the inversion matter? It's like that context too. Like, where's your melody at? You know, you might want to put a different note at the top depending on where your melody is, for example.
And also, I mean, it also has something to do with keeping yourself in a certain range of the instrument. I know, like Mike always says, like between this note and that note, like that's like, you know, but I don't really know where that is.
No, totally. I'm gonna be honest. I can't tell you like the definite note names. I'm too jazz baby to know that, but I know kind of like the general window. You know, you'd probably want to be like above middle C and to like a C6 with those types of voicings.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that'd be what I say. You know, and so like we talked about, context really matters. So solo piano will get you a different thing versus playing in a big band. You'll want to play something else. Oh, there's a big one. If you're accompanying a singer, you really want to know where that melody is. Like, you might not want to throw in like a sharp 11 if they're playing like if they're singing a fifth, right? So you don't want to like compete with the voice. You want to complement the voice, right? So I'm playing E minor, but I put the A on top because that's the melody note. So if I'm doing it with a singer, I can give them a little extra support. And what's more, I should probably take out the note closer to the melody so it's not competing. See, that's still a little crunchy, right? So it's just like knowing the context of where you're going, where the melody is. If the melody is on the root and the chart says play a major 7 chord and they're singing the root, that might be hard for a singer. So you might change it to a major 6 chord. So it's not as hard for the singer to hear it, you know? There's just thoughts. Latin versus swing voicings. I know I totally did those bullet points out of order, but that's okay. Latin, it is kind of more acceptable to put in roots and fifths a little more with your voicing. Like we talked about with Bossa Nova the other day. Bossa Nova guitar, which Thomas, you would know better about this, but stylistically, the guitar will play a lot of roots and fifths. And so if you're taking it from a piano perspective, yeah, you don't want to go crazy, especially with roots, you know, if you're with a bass player. But there is more leeway for that. So if I'm playing a bossa nova, I can maybe... or even... See, that's like a straight up Santisi chord, like pretty basic chord, and it sounds cool in the style. In the handout, it says something about Guayos. That's that thing. I'd say if you come across something like that in your jazz band, the main thing is just the little jump into the next beat, into the next measure. That's the most important part. And And all I'm doing there is, again, it's like a Santisi chord. It's an E minor 7 chord, just straight, simple. I'm not doing any extensions, nothing fancy. To add intensity on the piano, just as it's, you know, always can add intensity by making them octaves. So which one sounds more intense to you? I just added an octave, right? So, for example, I'm soloing, right, over A minor again. I'm just going to stay in A minor like that. And I'm blah, 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 I'm doing my thing. If I want, okay, you can almost think of like soloing on the piano as almost like a stick shift car. Okay, so I'm in gear 1. And so I'm doing like some monophonic stuff and just jabbing. So interacting with that. So I'm like saying something, responding, saying, responding. Okay, I'm like, oh, I'm getting close to the highway, I better shift it up a gear. All right, so what I can do is I keep it just, you know, monophonic up here, but I start comping with that. See how that sounds a little more intense than, right? Now I can bring the intensity level up again, and I can do octaves. So now I'm doing octaves, jab, octaves, jab. So now we're in like gear 3, yeah? So now, if I want to take it to gear 4, boom, get it really intense. I'm at like the pinnacle of my solo, I go. So now I'm like comping with the solo, and I'm doing octaves on top. So I get to that, my climax, and then maybe I want to bring it back down in energy. And then I finish up there. Something.
Nice.
So yeah, so think about that, you know, like, it's kind of like driving a stick shift car. Let's see. So, especially when you get into, you know, like situations where there's not a teacher, they're like, okay, do this, start it out this way, end it this way. A lot of that may fall to the piano player, you know, like you're in a small group and you're like, well, how are we going to start this thing, or how are we going to finish it, you know? The first bullet point, the piano's a harmonic driving force, so it's the first way it's going to be a leader in the group is by defining the harmony, right? So if the bass slaps down an A, and that's all they slap, I can choose, right? Maybe it's an A7, maybe it's an A minor 7, maybe it's a 6 chord. They're playing the same note, but I can change it in a lot of ways. Maybe I do want to bring that sharp 11 in there or something, you know. So you got a lot of power sitting in this spot. For intros, here are some common ones, like the last 8 bars of a tune. Right? So you could just play straight up the last 8 measures of a tune. You could also do the common chord progression like 3, 6, 2, 5. It's in the handout. There's a recording of Mac the Knife from Ella when she was in Berlin, and she's blabbing to the audience. So while she's blabbing, they got to figure out something to do, right? So that's all the piano player's doing. Just 3, 6, 2, 5, over and over. You could do a pedal, so like, Someday My Prince Will Come, if you check out, I think that's also in the handout, if you check out the Miles Davis version, there's like most people's like go-to, the bass is just pedaling the 5. So the song is in B flat, they're just pedaling on the F. And so the pianist then can so yeah, it was just like having fun off the 5 pedal. Oh, this one, that one's fun. Implied rubato could be fun for like a ballad, you know? If you're with a singer and maybe there's a verse before the song. Or you just are doing some pretty stuff at the beginning, so... Something like that, for an idea. Yeah. Endings, these are always fun, right? Also from like a singer's perspective, it's always a struggle, like how do you end the song, you know? So as the piano player, this is one of my favorites. I actually got a lot of these like transcribed onto Finale if anyone's interested. If you want to like get the visual, that might help to like quantify it. But for example, say I'm in B flat. What I can do is I take a B flat and then I play the minor chord above it, so I can play a D minor 7 chord, right? And then all I have to do is find the B flat again. All I've done is create a shape that I can just go up the keys with. So just create a shape. And that'll help your student too. If you explain things that like, this is a shape, right? I play B flat, play D minor 7 chord, pin it down with the B flat again. And it's a really easy way to start getting them just moving up and down the keys.
It's nifty.
Yeah, I like that trick. A teacher of mine taught it to me. He said he was in junior high and he was getting a jazz piano lesson and he couldn't get a ride there, and so he showed up to the lesson with like, he was like 45 minutes late. And this was a big deal. Like this guy, he was touring and he was visiting town, so the guy was like ticked off. And so he shows up late and he's like, all right, we got 15 minutes left. Let's learn this. So that's what he learned. He taught him. And so, yeah, it's quick, but man, it gives you like a nice sound, a good tool. Tinkerbell chord is what I call it, because I think that's what plays when Tinkerbell's like flying on the screen. If you grab a B flat and then grab an A minor 7, you got like a nice little Lydian mystical sound going. So you can end a tune like that too.
So that's a minor 7 chord built off of the major 7th degree, right?
Right.
Cool.
Right. So yeah, you just...
I'm sorry, Izzy. Was there like a question or anything from y'all or anything? Sorry, it's just been like chirping in my ear this entire time. Sorry, Izzy, please.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I should have asked that too. Thanks for letting me ramble, by the way.
No, you're great, Izzy. Please continue.
Yeah, so that's an easy one. It's like, it's totally okay to find mental like shortcuts. You know, instead of thinking like sitting down thinking, oh yeah, I'm gonna play a blah 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 Lydian, you know, this. Sharp 4, flat 9, whatever. I don't know. That was probably a wrong thing to say. But you could just, you know, find the key. I'm in the key of B flat. I go down a half step and make a minor 7 chord off of it. 5 down is a fun one. It's a fun way to do it is just kind of like, again, find the key that you're in. And then again, it would help with the visual, but just build a minor triad off of it, second inversion, and then goes minor seventh down. Sounds super nerdy. And
Just
then,
play it.
yeah, all you're gonna do. Right? It's kind of nifty. I also have that written out if anyone wants that to look at it. The Duke, that's a good one. You can even start combining them. So I just did Duke into Tinkerbell, you know, something like that. So I can like start creating multiple options. So how do you know when to play what, or like what makes sense? I mean, I'm sure you've heard it so many times, but it just really comes down to listening, and listening a lot, and to like the good stuff, you know? So who to listen to, there's a bunch of names on the handout, and these are just some things I've noticed of like what each person does. So if you want to, like, you can make it a guided listening exercise, active listening exercise with your student. Like, let's listen to Errol Gardner and pay attention to how he does, like, you know, like just changes one note all the time. And then have your student try to pick that out. So like little exercises like that. Yeah, so let's see. So here I have like examples of, I don't even know if the video will come up.
Oh, those are videos.
They are videos. But what I could do, if you guys are down to listen, I could put it up on.
We might wanna accelerate a little bit so that we can make
Sure.
sure we've got enough time for the band to rehearse. Time's getting away from us though. This is all good stuff. No, please continue about it. Maybe
Yeah.
just
Yeah, sure thing. So, like, definitely give that stuff a listen to. I will say something about this, though. This is my next point, keeping in touch with your own voice. Because for me, I was like a wind player for a long time, so it's really hard to feel like you're singing through an instrument that's not even close to your mouth. So if that happens, if your student gets stuck in a rut, I'm like, man, and they're like, I can't feel anything on this piano. You know, it's just so far away from me. Listening to vocalists helps a lot. So this is like a hip. It's super fun. It's Sarah Vaughan. The album is called All Crazy and Mixed Up, and it's her solo on Autumn Leaves. I think it's like a minute and a half in. Like Sarah Vaughan, her feel is like, she's my favorite vocalist, so I'm biased, but her feel is just right in the pocket. And also transcribing vocal solos. Like, this is something I did, I think, over the summer. There's this girl named Dominique Eade. She's pretty crazy cool. She does a lot of crazy harmonies. And so this is just an example of, it may seem like overkill, but it helps a lot. So if you can have your piano student take a vocal solo, transcribe it, and even transcribe the syllables. And
cool.
yeah, just get used to it, and that'll help with the feel and keeping like this and that all connected, you know.
Someone close that laptop.
Oh yeah, that's mine. Just something real quick. I'm trying to steer away from like the cliche blah blah blah, but there is an element of helpfulness for like girls that are in the jazz band. It is helpful if you like expose them to female artists. And so I know there are some days where I'm like, oh man, I can't hang with the guys. I'm so out of place, I don't fit in. When that happens, I'll just like pull up, you know, one of these ladies, like Diana Krall or Esperanza Spalding, you know, Nina Simone, and transcribe something of theirs, just to reinforce, like, yeah, I can do this, they did it, I can do it too, you know. And so so there's a list of them. But most of them do sing, and so also for the girls that don't sing, just like be aware of that. You know, maybe finding female artists that don't sing, right? Like Ingrid Jensen, for example, trumpet player. You know, and super quick, a couple of my favorite tips. If you go on Amazing Slowdowner, which Jeff has used in this class, and you crank the music all 12 pitches up so it moves it up an octave, it's super helpful for transcribing bass lines. Yeah. And so I would just move it up the octave and have your piano player transcribe bass lines that way so they hear it much easier. And then when it comes time to start creating their own lines, they have transcribed it. So it's going to feel a little more natural. And then Loop to Learn is an app. That's how you spell it. It's like a little triangle with some arrows. It's $2, and it takes away any excuses your students may have of like, oh, I didn't want to buy the song and put it into Amazing Slowdowner, so I didn't transcribe this. You know, it'll make it more accessible to them. So you just go on the app, it brings you right to YouTube, you type up any video, just take it right from there, and you can put the video at half speed and transcribe from there.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never heard of that. That's very cool.
I mean, is it as good as Amazing Slowdowner? Not even close. You can't have your octave trick too, so if you're transcribing bass lines, yeah, you just got to do it in that octave. But it has helped in a pinch, you know, if you're like crunched for time. So yeah, I mean, the handout has some more stuff. If you want any of like these voicings or whatever, like visualized, so if you want a finale version of it, just let me know. But like, I would recommend not giving that to your student and like, here's the voicing. I would recommend having them struggle through it and fumble through it and then type it into Finale themselves to like reinforce it. So yeah, I think that's about all I got. So are there any like questions or comments or, yes?
Can you send out if you have any things?
Yeah, on email, sure.
I want them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, send them
I
out.
think you could probably safely send them to everybody like you did the handout.
Sure thing. Yeah. Thanks for listening. I mean, I know it was a lot to go through, and it's hard without the visuals, you know, but yeah.
This
Yeah.
is illuminating.
Thank you so much, Izzy.
Let's be back.